The wall of silence inside CIA's most encrypted facility. Whispers. Beneath the mountain, beneath a jagged ridge of stone where the mountain met the sky. A quiet hum vibrated through the earth, faint enough to vanish into the wind, yet persistent enough to feel against the skin of anyone standing close. It was the first sign that something hidden lived below the surface. A machine or a presence that operated without pause, unseen and untouched by the world above. The mountainside looked ordinary from afar, but the closer one moved. The clearer it became that the silence here was controlled, crafted, and shaped by human hands. This was the gateway to a facility built not to be found, a place meant to exist only in rumors whispered by those who were never sure they should have spoken. A narrow service tunnel cut into the rock, appearing like a natural fracture, served as the only visible sign of entry. Two operatives in gray field jackets approached it with measured steps, their breath visible in the cold morning air. They carried nothing more than coded badges pressed against their palms, yet the air around them seemed to tighten as though the mountain itself evaluated their presence. A soft mechanical click echoed from deep inside, followed by a wave of cold air rushing outward as the tunnel lights ignited one by one, illuminating a path designed for those cleared to walk it and impossible for anyone else to survive. The tunnel widened gradually until the rock gave way to smooth metal walls that swallowed sound. Footsteps vanished the moment they touched the floor, absorbed by acoustic dampeners hidden beneath the plates. Cameras recessed into the ceiling moved with silent precision, tracking motion without betraying their presence. Every detail here was engineered to eliminate traces of life, turning the corridor into a place where noise itself seemed forbidden to exist. Around a curved bend, the real entrance waited. A towering steel door carved with no markings, its surface flawless and cold. It opened not with keys or codes, but with recognition, reading microsignals from the badges the operatives carried. The door slid apart soundlessly, revealing a vast atrium buried deep within the earth. The ceiling soared high, lit by beams that mimicked daylight without producing heat. A lattice of walkways and reinforced platforms encircled the chamber, leading to sealed rooms that looked less like offices and more like vaults designed to contain ideas too volatile to be spoken aloud. Below, a network of cables ran across the floor like veins of a living organism, glowing faintly as encrypted pulses traveled through them. Analysts in dark uniforms moved quietly between stations, their screens filled with shifting patterns, spectral graphs, and cascading numeric storms. This was not a normal intelligence hub. It was the epicenter of a silent architecture of secrecy, a place where every whisper from foreign soil, every coded signal from distant skies, every anomaly caught in the static of the world was drawn in, examined, filtered, and locked away. In one of the upper walkways, an operative named Carter stepped toward a glass-paneled observation deck. He had been assigned here only once before, years earlier, and even then he had never been granted access to the inner core. His presence now meant something had changed, something critical enough to require a level of clearance that operatives spent lifetimes earning and sometimes never reached. He paused before the door as a pale blue scanner swept across his eyes, reading dilations, micro-movements, and biometric signatures buried deeper than fingerprints. The door acknowledged him with a soft chime before sliding open. Inside, a circular chamber awaited him, its center dominated by a transparent cylindrical column rising from floor to ceiling. Within it, streams of luminous particles swirled in patterns that reorganized themselves constantly as if the column were thinking. No one outside the facility knew its true name. Internally, it was called the Archway, device designed to process the world's most encrypted intelligence at speeds no human could conceive. Every message entering the facility passed through it before reaching analysts. It was the brain of the mountain, the core of the wall of silence. Carter watched as new threads of light spiraled upward, merging into a single point before dispersing again. He could not read the patterns. Few could, but he understood their importance. somewhere across the globe. A signal had been intercepted and funneled here within seconds. It meant something was happening out there. Something significant enough to trigger an alert inside the most protected facility the CIA operated. The chamber door opened again as Director Hale entered, his expression carved from years of secrets he carried but never confessed. Hale motioned Carter toward a console where a single line of text pulsed on the screen. The message had no origin point, no signature, no recognizable pattern. It was as if it had appeared from nowhere, bypassing firewalls, satellites, and secure channels to land directly inside the archway. Such a breach was impossible. Such a breach meant the wall of silence had been touched from the outside. Carter leaned closer as Hale spoke, his voice low, steady, and devoid of emotion. "This is why you've been called in," he said. "We received a whisper from beyond the grid. No source, no encryption trail. No trace. Something is reaching into the facility. And whatever it is, it knows how to slip through every layer of silence we built." A cold pressure settled into the room, a weight that seemed to press against the walls themselves. The message pulsed again, its pattern shifting into something more coherent, almost like a rhythm trying to mimic speech. Carter felt the faint vibration beneath his feet as the archway rerouted every available resource to decode it. Technicians gathered along the outer ring, their eyes fixed on monitors displaying an avalanche of active decryption attempts. Carter took a breath, sensing the anxiety brewing behind the calm faces around him. If something existed that could bypass the wall, then the very existence of the facility was at stake. Every secret stored here, every encrypted archive, every buried operation, every silent strategy crafted in the shadows could be at risk. The facility was built on the idea that nothing, not a signal, not a thought, not a whisper could enter uninvited. Yet something had. Carter stared at the pulsing message, the faint glow reflecting across his eyes as the dark hum of the mountain deepened. Something was calling from beyond the silence, and the wall had heard it. Something was calling from beyond the silence. Something was calling from beyond the silence. It wasn't a voice, not a signal in any ordinary sense, and definitely not the kind of intrusion the wall of silence was built to resist. Yet it was there, faint, rhythmic, impossible to classify. Inside the dimly lit chamber, Carter stood perfectly still, listening as if the message could somehow reveal itself through instinct alone. The hum of the underground mountain vibrated around him, a reminder that nothing in this place existed by accident. Every cable was isolated, every wall shielded, every node insulated against the outside world. And yet something had slipped through. Carter moved toward the central console. The screens around him flickered with the same repeating pulse, not sound and not code, but something in between. The system kept attempting to categorize it, but it failed each time. No encryption family matched it. No communication signature resembled it, and no adversarial nation had ever used anything close to it. If it was a breach, it was one so advanced that even the wall's predictive systems couldn't identify the entry point. He placed his hand on the biometric pad. The glass shifted from clear to a deep ultraviolet glow, scanning every layer of the pattern in his palm before unlocking. The curved chamber beyond the door was the core of the facility, a massive circular space carved into the mountain and built entirely for silence. The architects had designed it to be the quietest room on Earth, a chamber where no outside energy could survive long enough to become a threat. But the moment Carter stepped inside, the pulse followed him. It reverberated faintly against the glass floor, not as sound but as pressure. He walked slowly to the central platform where the wall's main listening system hovered, suspended by magnetic anchors. It was shaped like a black monolith, covered in shifting soft light, constantly absorbing and analyzing everything around it. Carter could feel the energy inside it, moving like a tide. He tapped the control interface. A thin line of blue light spiraled up the monolith's surface. The wall's voice, synthesized to be calm and neutral, echoed softly. Unclassified pattern detected, cross-referencing all known registries. No match. Attempting dynamic decryption. Carter frowned. What's the origin point? There is no origin. The words chilled him. Meaning? Pattern does not follow any inbound trajectory. It did not arrive here. Carter stared at the monolith. Then how is it inside the system? Unknown. He exhaled slowly. Unknown was not a word the Wall of Silence ever used lightly. Every byte of information that entered or exited the mountain was filtered through multiple layers of encryption. Quantum firewalls, air-gap barriers, and physical failsafes that had no remote interface at all. Nothing could come inside unless the wall itself allowed it. That was the entire purpose of this facility. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing. Run a timeline reconstruction. When did the first pulse appear? 17 minutes and 12 seconds ago. What triggered it? There was a pause. The monolith pulsed faintly. No trigger detected. The pattern appeared simultaneously across all internal nodes. Carter felt his chest tighten. All nodes at once. Yes, that wasn't a breach. That wasn't an outside attack. That was something waking up. A soft chime echoed from behind him. Carter turned sharply. The chamber's outer ring had activated, projecting thin threads of holographic data across the floor. It was the facility's predictive system used to simulate threats in real time. The threads stretched outward like a web, forming a three-dimensional map of the entire mountain. Every corridor, every chamber, every encrypted archive appeared as glowing lines suspended in the silent air. Carter watched as the pulse spread across the map, threading through corridors that had never been connected, drifting into vaults that had no network links, passing through layers of shielding that should have been impenetrable. Then it converged on a point deep beneath the facility, a point that wasn't supposed to exist. Carter leaned forward. Zoom. The map spiraled downward through the simulated mountain. The display stopped at a sealed chamber. No lights, no connections, no access points. "What is that room?" he whispered. The wall responded. "Classified beyond your clearance." Carter blinked. "I'm level black." "Correct." "So what classification is this?" The monolith dimmed before responding. "Level 0." Carter froze. Level 0 wasn't a clearance level. It was a myth whispered about among the oldest intelligence circles. A rumor that somewhere in the deepest parts of the CIA's infrastructure, there were projects even the directors weren't briefed on. Programs so dangerous or so foundational that only a handful of people ever learned they existed. But he had never believed the stories. Until now. Carter felt the pulse again, stronger this time. It trembled through the map, drifting upward from the level 0 chamber like a rising signal. Only this time, it wasn't random. It was steady, intentional, almost like it was climbing. He stepped back from the hologram. Wall shut down all internal links to that chamber, unable to comply. Override, Carter Black 61. Unable to comply, he stared at the monolith. "Is something preventing you from isolating it?" "Yes. What is stopping you?" The wall responded in a soft whisper. "It is." Carter's breath caught in his throat. The pulse moved again. The Wall of Silence was answering something. The chamber lights flickered. The air grew heavier. And for the first time in the facility's history, the silence inside the mountain felt alive. The moment Carter acknowledged the echo, something was calling from beyond the silence. The mountain seemed to shift, as if a giant creature beneath the earth had inhaled. It wasn't movement in the physical sense, but an atmospheric tightening. A compression of the air that pressed against his chest like invisible hands. The Wall of Silence had never reacted to anything external in its 41-year history. Its sensors were designed to detect intrusion at the quantum level, Anomalies so small they would be invisible to any machine built by human hands. Yet something had triggered a pulse. And pulses only meant one thing: a message attempting to pass through barriers that should have been impenetrable. Carter stepped toward the sealed door leading into the first inner chamber, the room designed for soundless operations, where signals died before reaching the walls. The door's massive structure, built with layered composite materials that didn't exist anywhere else outside of prototype labs, refracted faint reflections of his movement. He passed his hand slowly over the biometric panel. The light scanned him, hesitated, scanned again, then finally opened with a heavy sigh of metal and vacuum pressure equalizing. Inside, the room felt colder than before, almost unnatural. The chamber was built to remain temperature stable down to 1/10 of a degree no variance. Yet now, the air carried a chill that touched his skin like a warning. The screens along the curved wall flickered with unreadable symbols, dense clusters of numerical noise shifting every second. But the pattern wasn't random. Carter recognized the rhythm: too structured, too measured, too intentional. Something or someone was trying to speak. He stepped deeper into the chamber, feeling the silence thicken into a physical weight. This was the part of the facility where no sound existed, not even echo. The walls drank noise. Even his breathing vanished into nothingness. And yet, in that engineered absence, he felt something impossible, faint. Extremely low resonance, vibrating through the floor like a whisper trapped beneath a stone. He froze. The wall wasn't supposed to transmit anything from the outer world. The entire mountain was a shield of layered geological fortification. Anything reaching this depth would have to pass through multiple levels of shielding: radio, magnetic, quantum, atmospheric. No natural signal could do that, and no man-made device had ever succeeded. So what was this? Carter reached the main console and dragged his fingers across the display. The system hesitated before responding, as though resisting. The internal logs opened, timestamps cascading in long sequences of encrypted markers. One line glowed brighter than the rest: audio signature detected, source unknown, access denied. The phrase "shouldn't exist." Audio in a chamber where audio couldn't survive. He tapped into the sealed logs. The system pushed back, not denied, resisted, as if something else was holding onto the logs from the other side. He exhaled sharply, leaned closer, and overrode the lock with the emergency cipher key known only to 3 people in the facility. The screen flashed, dimmed, then opened a narrow window. Behind the encrypted veil, a pattern appeared: lines of spectral data sculpted into a waveform that didn't resemble human speech, mechanical noise, or environmental echo. It was smoother, controlled, like a voice processed through dozens of filters until nothing natural remained. Carter enhanced the signal, filtering it through layered spectral isolation. The room grew colder. The floor trembled, just slightly, but enough for him to feel it through his boots. The waveform shifted. Then a single faint tone emerged. Not loud, not even clear, but unmistakably deliberate. A tone that carried the shape of a message. A tone that had purpose. Carter leaned closer. The tone shifted again, warmer, sharper, almost forming syllables. And then something behind the sealed doors moved. It was not human movement. Humans have weight, rhythm, breath. Whatever shifted behind that massive layer of composite alloy moved like shadow given mass smooth, gliding without footstep or friction. Carter's pulse spiked. He turned his head slowly. The sealed interior door, the one no one entered without a 3-layer clearance, pressed outward. Only by a fraction, but enough to show that something on the other side was testing it. Carter instinctively stepped back. The console's lights flickered, dimmed, and then pulsed in the same rhythm as the tone now vibrating across the chamber. It wasn't random. It wasn't error. It was synchronization, like the facility was answering back. Carter whispered under his breath, even though the room stole his voice instantly. "This isn't possible." Another shift from behind the sealed door. A soft thud. Then silence. Not natural silence, the engineered kind. The kind that swallowed everything. Carter reached toward the emergency lock of the sealed door. His hand trembled not with fear exactly, but with the awareness that if something existed beyond that door, it meant the protocols of the wall had been breached not from outside, but from within. He placed his hand on the access panel. The light turned red, then orange, then white. The system wasn't refusing. It was waiting, like the door wanted to open but needed permission. Carter exhaled slowly and whispered again, not words, just breath. The panel glowed, recognized the intent, and clicked. The sealed door depressurized with a deep, metallic groan. The cold air spilled out like fog, carrying with it a faint trace of something that made the hair at the back of Carter's neck rise. Not a smell, not a sound. A presence. Carter stepped forward and pushed the door open just enough to see the darkness inside a darkness to uniform. Too heavy, as though light itself had chosen not to enter. The tone from the console pulsed again, slower, deeper, answering something inside the room. Carter's breath hitched, 'cause the darkness pulsed back. He reached for the wall switch, but before his hand touched metal, a soft vibration rolled through the chamber floor, traveling from the sealed room into his feet, up his spine. Not hostile, not welcoming, communicative. He froze. The wall of silence, for the first time in its history, was no longer silent. It was listening, and something inside the sealed room was speaking to it. Carter's mind raced through every classified scenario. None included this. None allowed for this. None explained this. Because if the wall was listening, then something had found a way to speak through it. And that meant the facility, the most encrypted place on Earth, was no longer alone in the dark. Carter stepped back from the door, heart pounding, but gaze steady. He didn't know what was behind that sealed darkness yet. He didn't know how it had gotten in. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. The silence was no longer empty, and whatever had broken it was still inside. The mountain stood as a silent sentinel, hiding within its rocky core a labyrinth where secrets went to sleep but never truly died. Beneath the earth, in the bowels of the CIA's most encrypted facility, rows of humming servers and blinking lights formed a delicate symphony, a heartbeat of intelligence that few could comprehend. Every corridor, every reinforced door, and every camera was a note in this composition of silence. Agents moved like shadows, their footsteps muffled, their voices barely above whispers, for here even a breath could betray a lifetime of carefully curated information. Lieutenant Mark Callahan had been assigned to this mountain for nearly 6 months. He had learned to read the silence, to understand its rhythms. The codes that passed through these halls were more than data. They were living organisms, evolving with each transmission, constantly testing the boundaries of human ingenuity. Callahan traced his finger along a biometric scanner. Every pulse in his body synchronized with the facility's meticulous timing. One wrong move, one mistimed keystroke, and the digital guardians of the mountain would lock him out, or worse, erase his access permanently. The corridors here were deceptively simple. At first glance, they looked like sterile tunnels of metal and concrete. Yet hidden beneath the surface was a network of signals that disappeared before detection. Engineers spoke of them as vanishing currents, streams of information that existed only briefly before fading into encrypted oblivion. Callahan knew that each encrypted message was a puzzle, a whisper of intent from one agent to another, and unraveling it without authorization was unthinkable. Yet the challenge was intoxicating. He had spent nights following trails of code-like footprints in snow, deciphering patterns that even the most sophisticated algorithms struggled to identify. In one isolated wing of the facility, a room existed that few had ever entered. Its walls were lined with layers of shielding so advanced that electromagnetic waves could not penetrate, nor could sound escape. The room was nicknamed the Echo Chamber because within its confines, Every spoken word, every tap on a keyboard vanished as though it had never existed. Here, the most sensitive secrets were drafted and stored. The blueprints of surveillance systems, the outlines of foreign operations, and lists of undercover assets, all kept under a vault of absolute silence. Callahan had been summoned to this room, tasked with verifying a new encryption protocol. As he stepped inside, the temperature dropped slightly, an almost imperceptible signal that he was now in the heart of the mountain. The work was relentless. One small miscalculation could unravel months of preparation, and the pressure was palpable. Yet for every tense moment, there was a strange beauty in the precision, a rhythm to the silence that few could appreciate. Messages arrived and vanished within milliseconds, unseen to the naked eye. Yet every agent here understood their gravity. Information flowed like water through hidden channels, shaping the outcomes of events halfway across the globe. Each keystroke in this chamber could influence decisions that would never be attributed to the human hand that typed it. Callahan paused in the center of the echo chamber, listening to the hum of the servers. In the silence, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down upon him. Every secret had a story, every code a life, and here beneath the mountain, power was measured not in noise, but in restraint. It was a realm where knowledge itself became an invisible weapon, and those who commanded it wielded influence without ever being seen. The whispers beneath the mountain carried messages that could change the world. Yet they remained unheard, hidden in plain sight. As night fell outside, the facility never slept. The blinking lights continued their rhythm. The vanishing signals pulsed through the hidden pipelines. And the agents moved silently through corridors designed to erase all but the most essential truths. Callahan understood that this was more than a job. It was a test of patience, discipline, and intellect. In a world obsessed with visibility and accolades, the greatest victories were one where no one could witness them. Here, beneath the mountain, silence was not emptiness, was power. It's the ultimate safeguard in a war fought with information, shadows, and whispers. Beneath the jagged peaks of the remote mountain, the facility's true arteries pulsed silently, unseen and unfathomable to anyone outside its walls. The pipeline, as operatives whispered in hushed tones, was not a simple passage of data. It was an ecosystem of information, a network of intelligence that flowed with precision and discretion, stretching across continents without leaving a trace. It was here that Lieutenant Mark Callahan had spent countless nights tracing the invisible streams. A labyrinth where the most sensitive secrets of the world coursed like rivers beneath the surface. Each line of encrypted communication, each encoded directive, each whispered instruction from a distant agent converged into this living network, forming a digital bloodstream that nourished the operations of the CIA. The scale of the pipeline was staggering. It spanned hundreds of miles of underground conduits, redundant fiber optic strands, shielded electromagnetic channels, and air-gapped servers that existed in isolation from any network the world could touch. The facility itself was a fortress, but the true defense lay not in walls or gates, it lay in the knowledge that the pipeline could vanish at a moment's notice, rerouting and encrypting itself faster than any adversary could follow. Callahan often likened it to a subterranean river, its currents invisible yet potent, capable of carrying whispers that could alter the fate of nations. Inside the main control chamber, vast banks of consoles and monitors glowed in the dim light, each screen reflecting a small fragment of the global flow. Analysts and engineers worked in tandem, eyes scanning lines of code that appeared chaotic but were in reality a symphony of signals. The pipeline was not static. It was dynamic, constantly regenerating, testing itself against hypothetical intrusions and evolving like a living entity. Every keystroke by Callahan or his colleagues could trigger a cascade of encryptions, rerouting streams, masking origins, and ensuring that no message could ever be traced. It was the ultimate dance of secrecy, where precision was life and error was catastrophe. Callahan moved down one of the narrow corridors linking the chambers, the soft hum of servers vibrating through the floor. He paused near a junction, a nexus where multiple branches of the pipeline converged. Here, the flow of intelligence was most dense, a torrent of information from foreign operations, embedded field agents, satellite feeds, and cryptographic intercepts. Each message was fragmented, broken into thousands of packets, encoded with multiple layers of encryption, and transmitted through redundant channels to prevent compromise. To an outsider, it would seem indecipherable, but for those trained to navigate the currents, it was a map of global influence. A silent conversation between operatives and analysts that shaped strategy, politics, and covert action. Callahan's task tonight was both routine and critical. A high-priority message had arrived from an undercover operative embedded in a foreign intelligence service. The content was sensitive, detailing movements that could alter the balance of ongoing operations. The message was fragmented across 5 separate encrypted streams, each following a different path through the pipeline. Callahan initiated the verification protocol, matching keys, timestamps, and identity markers with painstaking care. Any misstep could compromise the source, revealing a hidden operative to hostile intelligence and potentially unravel months of planning. Hours passed as he meticulously traced each fragment, assembling the coherent intelligence piece by piece. The process was exhausting but precise, a mental marathon where concentration, memory, and intuition were equally tested. Outside the control chamber, the facility remained a hive of quiet activity. Security teams monitored biometric access, engineers optimized bandwidth, and analysts decoded and re-encoded messages to maintain the pipeline's invisibility. Every element of the operation was interdependent, a symphony in which a single discordant note could compromise the entire system. Callahan reflected on the history of the pipeline. It had been conceived decades ago as a response to the vulnerabilities exposed during early covert operations. What began as a series of simple underground cables had evolved into a multi-layered, self-healing infrastructure capable of moving intelligence across continents faster than any adversary could anticipate. Its existence was unknown to the public, even to most government officials, and the few who understood its magnitude approached it with a mixture of awe and reverence. The pipeline was proof that in intelligence, the most powerful tools were those no one ever saw. The mechanisms of control that worked silently in the shadows. As midnight approached, a subtle alert signaled a new intrusion attempt. Not by an enemy, but as part of the pipeline's own self-testing protocol. Automated defenses sprang into action, streaming traffic was rerouted, encryption layers multiplied, and phantom packets were generated to mislead any hypothetical observer. Callahan watched the system respond, fascinated by its elegance. It was as though the pipeline was conscious, aware of its surroundings, and capable of defending itself with a precision no human operator could achieve. Here, beneath the mountain, the lines between technology and sentience blurred, and the secrets it protected seemed almost alive. For Callahan, the night continued in a seamless flow of observation, intervention, and verification. He knew that each successful message transmitted through the pipeline reinforced the facility's reputation as the ultimate guardian of intelligence. Across the globe, operations proceeded with the unseen guidance of this subterranean network. Decisions were informed by streams of data that traveled silently beneath mountains. Oceans and borders and lives were shaped by actions taken in rooms no one could enter, guided by agents who moved without leaving a trace. The pipeline was not merely a network. It was a testament to discipline, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of control in a world defined by uncertainty. It was a reminder that power often lies not in visibility, but in the mastery of what remains unseen, that the greatest victories are sometimes those the world never knows have occurred. And as Callahan sat in the dim glow of the control chamber, watching packets of secrets flow through the veins of the earth, he understood that he was part of something far larger than himself, a living, breathing system of intelligence where silence was the most potent. Currency and the pipeline of secrets carried it with unyielding fidelity. Beneath the mountain, past the chambers of the echo room and the pipeline of secrets. Lay the corridor of vanishing signals, a place that even the most seasoned agents spoke of in hushed tones. It was neither a corridor in the conventional sense nor a simple passage. It was a network of conduits, fibers, and electromagnetic channels where information moved and then disappeared, vanishing into encryption layers so complex that they could confound even the most sophisticated adversaries. For Lieutenant Mark Callahan, walking this corridor was akin to navigating a river of ghosts. Signals that existed only long enough to convey their meaning before dissolving into nothingness. Every step he took was deliberate. The walls were embedded with sensors that tracked not only physical movement, but the very energy of thought transmitted through handheld devices and console interfaces. Messages here did not linger. A single packet of intelligence might travel milliseconds before fragmenting into phantom copies that led nowhere. Designed to mislead, to protect, and to ensure that the secrets of the facility remained untouchable. Callahan ran simulations in his mind, tracing each stream, imagining the paths it would take, knowing that even the slightest error in understanding could compromise critical operations. The corridor was more than technology. It was a test of perception, discipline, and intellect. Analysts working remotely would send decoy signals that appeared real but dissolved as soon as they were traced, forcing any unauthorized observer into a maze of false leads. In this way, the facility could move critical intelligence with absolute security. Callahan paused at a junction where multiple signal streams converged, watching the holographic monitors display bursts of light, each representing a message in transit. To anyone outside, the corridor appeared empty, silent, and unremarkable. Yet inside, it was a living system, constantly adapting, hiding, and protecting. Callahan thought back to the origins of this corridor. It had been conceived during a time when foreign intelligence agencies had begun to detect and intercept traditional communications. The CIA realized that secrecy required more than encryption. It required movement without trace. The corridor of vanishing signals was the result of a living infrastructure where data could flow as freely as water, yet leave no mark, no shadow, no trail. Every fragment, every packet, every flash of light in the monitors was orchestrated to disappear, creating a rhythm of silence that few could understand but all relied upon. As he progressed further, the air seemed charged with anticipation. Each signal passing through the corridor carried intelligence from distant agents, field operatives, and satellite arrays. They were whispers of action, glimpses of strategy, and instructions for operations that would shape the global landscape. Callahan's eyes darted between monitors, analyzing trajectories, checking redundancies, confirming identities, and validating encryptions. Every success here meant security. Every lapse, no matter how small, could risk exposure, compromise lives, and endanger missions spanning continents. Time became irrelevant as Callahan traced each disappearing signal, following its path like a detective following footsteps that dissolved before reaching the ground. The corridor demanded total focus. The slightest lapse could result in the loss of invaluable intelligence. Yet, for those who mastered it, the corridor became a sanctuary of control, a space where invisibility and mastery over information were indistinguishable. It was here that the CIA could operate in total secrecy, orchestrating operations that the world would never know existed. Hours passed as the mountain hummed quietly above, masking the invisible work below. Callahan felt a deep sense of purpose. The signals were more than data. They were lifelines, shaping events in ways no public record could ever capture. Across oceans and borders, decisions were being made based on messages that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The corridor was proof that in intelligence, the unseen often mattered more than the seen, and mastery over disappearance was power. Finally, as dawn approached, Callahan reached the end of the corridor. The signals had vanished as expected, leaving no trace of their passage, no record of their journey. And yet their impact was undeniable. He paused, recognizing the paradox. The greatest influence often comes from the things no one can touch, see, or hear. In the corridor of vanishing signals, silence was action, invisibility was strength, and secrecy was absolute. The facility remained a fortress to the outside world, its walls impenetrable, its purpose hidden. Inside, the corridor of vanishing signals reminded every agent of the delicate balance they maintained between knowledge and concealment, between action and invisibility. Callahan walked back, understanding that in this hidden mountain, every vanished signal, every disappearing message, was a testament to the meticulous, relentless, an unyielding art of intelligence where silence and disappearance were the ultimate weapons in a world built on secrets. Deep within the mountain, past the corridors of vanishing signals and pipelines of secrets, there existed a chamber few had ever entered, and fewer still had survived without being changed. It was known simply as the room that erased the truth. To the untrained eye, it might appear as just another secure chamber within the facility, yet it was far more than that. It was the heart of the CIA's most protected operations, a place where knowledge, memory, and information could be contained, scrutinized, and, when necessary, completely erased. Lieutenant Mark Callahan had been summoned here with a sense of gravity unlike anything he had ever felt in his years within the organization. The room itself was deceptively simple. Its walls were lined with layers of electromagnetic shielding and soundproofing so advanced that even the PNC's smallest vibration could not escape. Inside, vast arrays of consoles and servers pulsed with activity, each connected to strands of data flowing invisibly across the facility. Callahan stepped carefully into the chamber, feeling the hum of power, a low vibration that seemed almost alive. The air smelled faintly of ozone, a subtle reminder of the energy coursing through the systems that controlled the fate of secrets too sensitive to exist elsewhere. Here, the concept of truth was fluid. Information entered the room like a stream of light, precise and structured, but it could be altered, rewritten, or eradicated entirely under the guidance of authorized personnel. Each operation was carefully documented in secure logs, yet the logs themselves were encrypted to the highest degree, accessible only to a handful of top-level analysts. Callahan approached the central console, where a new directive awaited his verification. The message contained data from an undercover operative whose identity, if revealed, could jeopardize missions and lives across multiple regions. The task was clear: verify, secure, and, if necessary, erase all traces of this intelligence once it had served its purpose. The process was intricate. Every action Callahan took triggered layers of validation protocols, fingerprint scans, retinal authentication, biometric pulses, all synchronized to ensure that the room could not be compromised. As he typed commands and reviewed encrypted streams, he understood the paradox of the space. It was a chamber built to preserve secrets, yet designed to erase them completely at a moment's notice. The technology was unmatched. Nothing outside this facility could rival it. Every deletion, every purge, was a surgical act performed with precision so exact that even the most skilled hacker would see only shadows and fragments of the original data. Time in the room seemed suspended. Hours could pass unnoticed, the only markers being the blinking lights of servers and the subtle vibration underfoot. Callahan traced a set of sensitive files, verifying each piece of intelligence, cross-referencing codes, and ensuring that nothing could leak outside the chamber. Here, even the slightest oversight could have catastrophic consequences. One misstep could expose covert operations, reveal the identities of operatives, or compromise an entire network of intelligence. Yet for every challenge, there was a meticulous beauty in the process, the perfection of precision. The artistry of control over truth itself. The room was more than technology. It was a psychological test as well. Those who worked within its walls had to understand the weight of the information they held. The ability to erase truth was not just techniclit, was moral and intellectual. Callahan realized that the greatest power in the room was restraint. Every command executed, every piece of intelligence modified or deleted required judgment, patience, and an unwavering understanding of consequences. As the night deepened, a subtle alert flickered across the main console. A new batch of intelligence had arrived from a field operative in a hostile territory. Callahan initiated the verification process, watching each packet of information split into fragments, encrypted, and routed through multiple virtual channels within the chamber. Some data would be archived, some analyzed, and others, if deemed too dangerous or sensitive, would be completely erased, leaving no trace of its existence. Each operation was a delicate balance of preservation and destruction, a test of control over the very essence of truth itself. By the early hours of morning, Callahan stepped back, surveying the room. Files had been secured, erasures executed flawlessly, and the new intelligence fully integrated into the facility's secure databases. The room that erased the truth had performed as intended, a living testament to the CIA's mastery over information. In this chamber, power was measured not by visibility, but by invisibility, the capacity to contain, manipulate, and erase truth while remaining undetected. Callahan left the room with a profound sense of responsibility, knowing that the world outside remained unaware of the monumental operations conducted in silence beneath the mountain. The mountain above remained quiet, indifferent to the orchestration of secrets that pulsed below its rocky surface. Here, in the deepest and most secured chambers of the facility, Lieutenant Mark Callahan and his colleagues understood a fundamental truth. Silence was not emptiness. It was power. Every keystroke, every erased file, every vanished signal contributed to a force invisible yet immense, shaping global operations in ways the world would never know. In this final chapter of the facility's story, the culmination of its purpose became clear. Intelligence was not about the collection of data alone. It was about control, discretion, and precision. Callahan moved through the corridors one last time, observing analysts at their terminals, engineers adjusting the flow of information, and security teams ensuring that every protocol remained uncompromised. The synchronization of human skill and advanced technology created a system that functioned like a living organism, capable of responding instantly to threats and opportunities, always unseen, always decisive. Silence itself had become an instrument. Conversations were measured, signals vanished, and knowledge was managed with such care that even the most observant adversary could glean nothing. Here, decisions were made, plans executed, and lives influenced, all without noise, without recognition, without the possibility of interruption. Callahan realized that the greatest victories of the facility were not recorded, celebrated, or witnessed. They were achieved through invisibility, through the quiet mastery of what could not be seen. As dawn broke, faint lights seeped into the periphery of the mountain, touching the reinforced doors, the corridors, and the hum of servers. To the outside world, the mountain was silent, untouched, and ordinary. Yet within, an immense current of intelligence had moved. Decisions had been finalized, secrets preserved or erased, and power exerted in total invisibility. Every agent, every analyst, and every engineer contributed to a complex ecosystem where silence, discipline, and precision dictated outcomes. Callahan paused at the central observation chamber, looking down the corridors he had traversed so many times. The hum of servers, the flicker of encrypted streams, the faint electronic pulse of security protocols all reminded him of the unseen work that shaped the world. Here, beneath the mountain, silence was not just a strategy. It was a weapon, a shield, and a source of influence. Every secret secured, every truth erased, every vanishing signal had demonstrated that in the hidden world of intelligence, the greatest power was wielded by those who understood that silence, when mastered, could move the course of history. The facility had fulfilled its purpose. The room that erased the truth had safeguarded reality. The pipeline had flowed without exposure. The corridor of vanishing signals had protected critical intelligence. And now, in this ultimate convergence, silence itself had become the most formidable force. Lieutenant Callahan walked away from the control consoles, understanding that the mountain's heartbeat, imperceptible to the world above, had shaped events across the globe. Here, in the deepest shadows of the CIA's most encrypted facility. The true power of intelligence was revealed not in noise, not in recognition, but in silence that commanded all.
The mountain stood indifferent as dawn light touched its peaks. Yet, beneath it, the facility had already completed another cycle of secrecy and control. Lieutenant Mark Callahan walked through the corridors, now familiar as the lines of his own thoughts. Understanding the weight of the work done here. This was the culmination of months, years, decades, even the invisible machinery that directed outcomes in a world oblivious to the forces shaping it. Every erased file, every vanished signal, every whisper behind sealed doors had contributed to this singular moment, the final echo of all that had transpired. Outside the compound, global events unfolded unaware of the silent decisions taken within these reinforced walls. Diplomatic outcomes, covert operations, economic maneuvers, and strategic responses had all been influenced by data that moved unseen through the pipeline, analyzed in the echo chamber, and protected in the corridor of vanishing signals. What the world saw as chance, coincidence, or bureaucratic process had, in fact, been meticulously guided by silent operations beneath the mountain. Callahan reflected on this paradox. The greatest power was exercised in invisibility, where silence itself dictated the course of nations. Within the facility, analysts continued their work, yet a subtle sense of completion lingered. Projects, once ongoing, had concluded. Files had been archived, deleted, or rerouted according to the directives carefully crafted by those who understood the weight of discretion. The room that erased the truth had served its purpose with precision, ensuring that sensitive operations left no trace, safeguarding both the operatives in the field and the integrity of intelligence networks worldwide. Callahan paused before the central console, watching as encrypted streams pulsed in orderly rhythm, a heartbeat that no one outside could perceive. The implications of the work done here were profound. Decisions based on intelligence secured and filtered in this facility had prevented conflicts before they began, redirected covert missions, and shaped outcomes that could determine the rise or fall of regimes. Lives had been saved, threats neutralized, and opportunities seized, all without recognition, without headlines, without acknowledgement. Callahan understood that true mastery in intelligence was not in the accolades one earned, but in the consequences that remained invisible yet decisive. He walked past the sealed chambers once more, noting the intricate web of security protocols, vanishing signals, and encrypted pipelines. Each element had functioned as intended, a testament to human ingenuity, married with technological precision. The silence that pervaded these halls was no mere absence of sound. It was a form of control, an assertion of power over reality itself. Here, beneath layers of rock and reinforced steel, the CIA had demonstrated the ultimate truth of covert influence, that which could not be seen, monitored, or predicted held more sway than any overt action. Even as Callahan prepared to leave the control area, alerts continued to pulse softly on the monitors. The world outside remained unpredictable, yet the facility's silent mechanisms ensured that every risk was mitigated, every contingency accounted for, and every opportunity harnessed. Decisions made here resonated outward in waves, too subtle for the casual observer to detect, yet potent enough to alter the course of international relations, intelligence strategies, and covert operations. In a quiet reflection, Callahan considered the human dimension of all this. Every analyst, engineer, and agent had contributed to the orchestration of silence. Understanding that their actions, though unseen, carried profound weight. Mistakes could be catastrophic, yet the precision of their training, discipline, and judgment had maintained the integrity of operations. Here, the mastery of restraint, discretion, and foresight was measured not by recognition, but by outcomes, the unseen influence that guided the world. The final echo of the Facility-S operations was not a moment of fanfare, but a ripple of consequence. Global operations adjusted in response to intelligence that had traveled through invisible corridors, encrypted pipelines, and carefully curated channels. Missions succeeded, threats were mitigated, and decisions were informed by insights that would never be publicly known. The ultimate effect of silence had been realized, a world subtly shaped, protected, and influenced by actions that remained completely unseen. As Callahan exited the deepest corridors, the facility's lights dimmed slightly, returning the chambers to a low hum, a steady pulse that symbolized continuity. The mountain above remained still, but beneath it, the legacy of intelligence and secrecy endured. In the hidden heart of the CIA's most encrypted facility, silence had proven itself the most formidable tool, shaping not only the fate of nations, but the very fabric of reality, in ways no eye could witness, no voice could reveal, yet all would feel in the consequences that unfolded. Callahan took a final glance at the control room, knowing that history would remember little of this. Yet the world would continue to operate under the protection, guidance, and unseen influence of those who had mastered the art of silence. Here at last was proof that the greatest power in intelligence was wielded not through noise, exposure, or recognition, but through restraint, invisibility, and the subtle echo of choices that left no trace, yet changed everything.